Do you say Kamala or I say Kamala? Kamala Harris has what it takes, says the Washington Post. That's Joe Scarborough. She's got what it takes. That's a Republican.
Meaning giant donors.
Yep.
Meaning billionaire donors. She has what it takes.
She has what it takes, says Republican.
They actually don't finish the thought. It just says Kamala Harris has what it takes. Like, what to lose? Has what it takes for what?
So she says, for the people meant fighting for middle-class families who had been defrauded by banks and lost their homes in the Great Recession. Oh, I wish I would have read this in front of Graham last night because he got his house taken away by them.
Oh, really?
We went after the 5 biggest banks in the U.S., and we won 20. Oh, he would have went nuts reading this. Graham would have went nuts. She didn't prosecute Steve Mnuchin. When investigators in her office investigated One West Bank, which I think was the bank that took Graham's house.
West One is it?
Or One West.
One West.
They said they found 1,000 instances of criminality inside that bank, and if they investigated further, they'd probably find 1,000 more. She said, "Don't do it." She said, "Don't investigate further, and don't prosecute." And when asked why, she doesn't have an answer. There's no answer. And they were kicking people out of their houses illegally. They were kicking old ladies out of their houses for a nickel. Oh, you missed it. You were behind payment on a month. We're going to take your house away. They were doing all kinds of, again, 1,000 instances of criminal malfeasance inside their bank, and they'd find 1,000 more if they investigated. She said, don't investigate and don't prosecute. So that's why this would drive. This is true. That did happen. But Kamala Harris for the people, who runs Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, AT&T, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Microsoft, American Express, Facebook, Walt Disney, Comcast, Apple, Cisco, Warner Media, 21st Century, Citgo Group, Valero Energy, Hess Corporation, and Monsanto. So those would be her.
And to thank her for not going after his company, Steve Mnuchin donated heavily.
And Steve Mnuchin, One West Bank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He donated to her. Look at this guy. Kamala Harris is immediately the front runner for the Democratic nomination, and if Russia is predictable, they will create armies of bots attacking her from the left. If you're left of Kamala Harris, I'm sure you are honestly, but you'll be doing Putin's work, like it or not. You can't help it.
Do not go against our candidate, or you are doing Putin's work.
Or you are a commie, and that's it.
Done.
You
have
red.
no choice.
You're a red. That's it. You either support Kamala Harris or you're a red. You have no other choice. Can you believe this?
Red if you do, red if you don't.
So Kamala Harris, here's a lot of people have problem with her because of, well, first of all, this was good. She was asked, she was given a town hall in Iowa by CNN, which I'm sure they're going to do that for all the other candidates. And
for Tulsi Gabbard,
yeah.
Any minute now, Tulsi's town hall.
So they asked her, what's your stance on Medicare for all? And here's what she says.
Well, listen, the idea is that everyone gets access to medical care. And you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having them give you approval, going through the paperwork, all of the delay that may require. Who of us has not had that situation where you got to wait for approval and the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this? Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
So that, for Senator Harris' plan.
So there you go. So that was fantastic. That was a good answer. I'm like, oh my God, I don't think she really means it, but she's saying it like she does. So at least now the Overton window has moved, and now she knows she has to endorse Medicare for all.
Yeah,
and she can wink to her donors, and it's like, don't worry, we're not going to implement it.
And that's thanks to activists that have put this.
That's
forward
right.
Endlessly.
Bernie Sanders and activists who have kept the pressure on and changed the conversation in America.
Yep.
Well, guess what? She's already backtracking.
She got some phone calls.
So I was right. Yeah. She got some. Because, by the way, Kamala Harris is donor approved. She is the darling of the donor class. She already went to Martha's Vineyard a year ago and was anointed by the donor class, and so now she's the candidate. That's what happened, right? Lee, you know that, right?
Yeah. She went around and did a whole round of meetings with all of them to get approved and make sure she had their go ahead, and
she's approved.
Yeah,
the donor class doesn't have a problem with her. So I thought. So there you go.
Which means average Americans should have a problem with her.
Yes.
If the donors don't, then you should.
So here she is talking about truancy. You want to see Kamala Harris talk about truancy? So one of the things she did that was horrible was that she decided to start prosecuting the parents of truant kids. Now, who do you think ends up truant? Rich kids or poor black and brown kids? That's what we need to do, criminalize their parents. Scare the shit. You know, poor people are already living in a constant state of anxiety because of their lack of money. It creates a constant state of anxiety for them, which actually does lower your IQ when you live under that kind of monetary stress. Did you know that?
Yeah, studies have shown you make poor decisions when you're hungry and scared.
Yes. And so her solution was, let's scare the shit out of them even more. Well, here's what she says.
I would not be standing here were it not for the education I received.
And, you know, the donors, the cash. Thank you very much for the donors.
And I know many of us will say the same thing. And I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy. Well, this was a little controversial in San Francisco.
Hey, well, you got my vote. Not for president, but for funniest comedy bit about sending poor people to prison.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Here's a tip, Kamala. From a professional comedian, never laugh at your own material. I mean, criminalizing poor kids is hilarious. And criminalizing mainly poor black and brown kids is downright hilarious. But you're going to need those poor black and brown people to vote for you when you run for president. So what I'm saying is, on your next comedy special, you put those jokes on the DVD extras. That's what I'm saying, okay? That's what you do with those. All right. Hey, by the way, if you're keeping... So let's go back to more of this.
And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned because we didn't know at the time whether I was going to have an opponent in my re-election race.
Isn't that funny? We're going to start prosecuting poor people. And my staff was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I know it. I know I'm going to be stupid and crazy and an asshole, and I'm going to make their lives more miserable, and I'm going to fucking put the boot on their fucking head even harder.
I also love that she was basically just said that her moral compass was going to be decided as to whether she had an election coming up or not. She was like, we didn't know if I was going to have an election coming up, but, you know, because I would clearly change my moral decision if I did.
Right. That's... Here we go. Miss giggling about incarcerating poor people.
But I said, look, I'm done. This is a serious issue, and I've got a little political capital, and I'm going to spend some of it.
And this is how she decided
to spend it. And this is what we did. We recognized that in that initiative, as a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. The school district has got a carrot. Let's work in tandem around our collective objective and goal, which is to get those kids in school. So, to that end, on my letterhead, now let me tell you something about my letterhead. When you're the DA of a major city in this country, usually the job comes with a badge. And there is often an artistic rendering of said badge on your stationery. So, I sent a letter out on my letterhead to every parent in the school district, outlining the connection that was statistically proven between elementary school truancy, high school dropouts, who will become a victim of crime, and who will become a perpetrator of crime. We sent it out to everyone. A friend of mine actually called me and he said, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She brought all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail.
That is funny.
That's funny.
That is funny. I can't even watch anymore.
It's such a Republican idea. It's like
they're giggling.
Well, it's such a Republican idea that if you just prosecute people, largely poor, largely minorities, for not going to school or whatever, and prosecute their parents, that solves it.
That solves
so you lock up their parents, and then what?
Well, if they are in school, they are. Oh, by the way, so in 2012. As a result of the statewide law that passed with Harris's backing, one woman, Lorraine Cuevas, was sentenced to 180 days in jail. after her 2 young children missed more than 100 days of school. The local DA's office, like Harris and many others, tied it to keeping kids off the streets. If they are in school, they are less likely to be involved in gangs or drugs, James John of the county district's attorney's office said at the time. But one parent at the elementary school where Cueva's children were enrolled was more skeptical, asking what would seem to many to be the more pressing question, who's going to watch her kids? I think 180 days is extreme.
Yeah.
So she really did that.
Who's watching the kids?
She prosecuted a homeless woman. She put and she didn't put her in jail, but she put charges on a homeless woman. And then finally dropped the charges.
That's incredible.
So this is who Kamala Harris is. And you know why she likes to do that? She doesn't like to prosecute white-collar crimes. She'll admit it right here. Watch this.
So this was the work that we did, and we created a public integrity unit, and we created an environmental justice unit, and we focused on elder abuse. I focused on mortgage fraud. Why? Because it's a crime that is absolutely impacting so many people, and in large part going without consequence, because one of the things we in law, and especially in law enforcement, really...
So here she's going to reveal, here it is, why she doesn't like to prosecute white-collar crimes, because why?
Don't like are those paper cases.
They don't like the paper.
Right, you know, for any of you who has bought a house, you probably, how many of us really read every page that we signed when we got that loan? And so there are people being ripped off completely in that context over the last couple of years, and we needed to have a real focus around saying, let's create...
No, we don't like those paper cases.
Right, you go after the big white-collar criminals, and you have years in court.
Years.
And you're up against lawyers after lawyers after lawyers. It's a huge deal, and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And she's like, we don't want to do that work.
We don't. Nobody wants to do that work.
Because if you get them in jail, like if they're poor and powerless, you can get them in jail quicker.
Easy.
And then you get that prison labor that she's a fan of. So.
Yeah, that's true. She wants the prison labor. But yeah, they take the plea deals. 94% of federal cases and 97% of state cases take plea deals. So especially the poor, they'll take the plea deal.
That's right. So that. By the way, that was a clip that's been going around. Those 2 clips about her giggling about incarcerating poor people, and she tries to dress it up as some progressive idea. And there's another video. I'll do it another segment about. Did you see the video, Lee, where she says that people want to build more schools than prisons, but how come I still have 3 locks on my door? You haven't solved my problem by building schools. She says this. You think I'm kidding?
These are like straight up Republican talking points. This is straight up Fox News talking points.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I know. Well, she's a prosecutor. She's I mean, that's what, you're a person of color and you're a prosecutor and you're not a progressive prosecutor. It wasn't like she cleaned out the jails. She actually, did you know her office actually argued to keep, so it was a federal judge ordered her to release prisoners because they're overcrowding, and her office argued twice. They didn't do it. They wouldn't release the prisoners, and when they were brought back into court, the judge is like, why are you doing it? And they go, because it's going to upset our prison labor. It's too upsetting to our prison labor. They argued that twice. And then when the LA Times actually did a story about it, that's when Kamala Harris had to answer for it, and she pretended she didn't know anything. I'm shocked that this is what, really? You didn't know that your office was doing this? I'll give you the double CK.
That's like
that.
when, what's her name? Brenda Snipes said that her interns had
Yes.
signed off on destroying all the ballots in Florida.
What
in
Broward
I do?
County?
I didn't know that they destroyed all the
my
ballots.
staff, and they told me to sign things, and I just signed. So what's the point of having you sign them if you're not responsible? Of course, that's the whole point of having you sign it. So this is the problem with Kamala Harris, and I think you show that. I mean, how you show that video to? I don't know. I'm not in the minority community. I would imagine that they wouldn't respond well to that. Right? I mean, especially since we're the world's largest penal colony as it is, and we largely over-incarcerate black and brown people. It's unbelievable, right? They're way overrepresented. And so instead of being progressive, like there's the Philadelphia DA, right?
Yeah.
So he had all these great progressive ideas on how to, hey, if you're going to charge somebody with a crime, you have to also include in that charge how much money it's going to cost to incarcerate them. And do we think this is, you got him for a joint, it's going to cost us $200,000 to put this guy away? Is that really what we want to spend? So that's a progressive way to be a prosecutor. That's what she does is not.
Has anyone asked her why she calls herself a Democrat? Democrats are supposed to cover up these ideas and still do the awful things. They're supposed to not say them outright. She has to learn how to like cover it up a little
Doesn't
bit.
have the subtlety down
Yeah.
yet. She's got to.
So there you go. So if you're keeping score at home, going without an education is a crime, but charging an 18-year-old without any credit hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a college education that's useless, that's just good business. That's just good business. What do you think about? Well, by the way, let's play this again because this is funny. This is her commercial.
Truth, justice, decency, equality, freedom, democracy. These aren't just words. They're the values we as Americans cherish.
And when we put values on the ballot, that's what we win. So that's just hey, platitudes.
Words people like, according to polls.
I would like to see on the screen where it says truancy, jail.
Threat of incarceration.
And then
Mom's going away. Bop, 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 bop.
She was also, she was against the legalization of marijuana. Like she giggled about it when it was brought up to her. Her opponent at one of her races was for marijuana. She's like, if he wants to do that. It's just, again, she's not what she appears to be.
She's running around doing a lot of speeches for AIPAC as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, she's a big AIPAC speaker. And so since they push for constantly bombing in the Arab world, I assume she's not anti-war.
Oh, so that's why she got that town hall at CNN.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay, now that makes sense.
Yeah.
Got
And
it.
Mark Lamont Hill got fired.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh. So there you go. So
Truth.
that's truth.
And they're all on the line now. The future of our country depends on you and millions of others lifting our voices to fight for our American
Fight
values.
for what? Our American
That's
values.
why
What are
I'm
they?
running for President of the United States.
Prosecuting the homeless.
I'm running to lift those voices, to bring our voices together.
In prison.
So please join me in Oakland on Sunday, January.
Oh, I didn't go. Anybody else?
Well, one of the first things, I didn't go, but one of the first things that she said on her speech was immediately highlighting about her parents' involvement in civil rights.
Oh, okay.
That's what she likes to lead with. That just doesn't really necessarily suggest that's who she is when it comes
Right.
to her positions.
We're announcing our live dates for 2019. We're going to Chicago and Portland, Seattle, New York, all over the country. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all our tickets to all our shows. It'll be right underneath there, too. Please become a patron if you like our content and help support the show. You can become a patron for $5 a month, and we give you hours of bonus material. And make sure you're subscribed. They unsubscribe people every day. I'm not kidding. Make sure you're subscribed and click that bell so they give you a notice when we drop a video. It's the only thing we can do to fight back against the bastards. Thanks for your support.